Hello from the Channel studio in London and welcome to another edition of Foreign Dispatches, the programme that takes you around the world in 25 minutes. I'm Teniola Uyitayo. On the programme this week, Palestinians flee Khan Younis as Israeli forces strike South Gaza, plus thousands continue to rally across Israel, calling for a truce. Thousands of Palestinians are fleeing Khan Younis in southern Gaza after the Israeli military once again bombarded the largely ruined city and ordered a mass evacuation of residents. The UN estimates that 250,000 people in eastern parts of the city are affected by the orders issued on Monday. Displaced Palestinians say they're being forced to evacuate multiple times with no safe place left to go. Much of Khan Younis, Gaza's second largest city, was destroyed in a sustained Israeli offensive against Hamas earlier this year. The city, to which some of its residents subsequently returned, is almost unrecognizable. Nevertheless, many moved back to take refuge from Israel's offensive in Rafah. Now, once again, many are on the move, fearing a major new assault.
Bullets and shells were fired from everywhere. All the residents have left the camp. They have been displaced 10 times, moving from one place to another.
It was Israel that told the displaced people to go to Khan Younis. They designated here a safe place. Yesterday, we were shocked when the enemy randomly shelled the refugee tents, killing and injuring people.
For some residents in the Shajaya neighborhood, they didn't have as much time to flee as they came under unexpected airstrikes, leading to the death of at least 47 people.
I was making food for the kids to eat and then the shelling began, with rockets and shells falling above our heads. We came out, thanks to God. We don't know how we got out. They didn't warn us or even throw evacuation leaflets.
Israeli military officials have described a shift to a third phase of the fighting in Gaza, with raids from troops based at strategic locations within the territory, replacing the major offensives seen in recent months. Most of Gaza's population of 2.3 million have fled their homes, with many repeatedly displaced. Israeli restrictions, fighting, and the breakdown of public order have hindered the delivery of humanitarian aid, fueling widespread hunger and sparking fears of famine. Aid agencies say there is no safe place left for civilians to go. The territory's ability to dispose of garbage, treat sewage, and deliver clean water has also been decimated by months of war. This has made grim living conditions worse and raised health risk for hundreds of thousands of people deprived of adequate shelter, food, and medicine.
بنتفاجأ في يوم وليلة تلاقي هنا مكب حيوانات على عزك ميتة. أطفال صغار بتاكل من النفايات هذه اللي أنت شايفها، أطفال صغار بتاكل. عندنا مواليد الطفلة تجيش عمرها شهر 40 يوم الحب انتشر في جسمها. بنراجع بنناقش بنحكي مع اللي بيجي بكبانا لو سمحت بس كبنا لتحت شويه ما برضى. احنا بننظف وراه، احنا اللي بنزيح، احنا اللي بندفن الدواب اللي بيجي بيرموا لنا اياها. عندك هنا في حصان متحلل، لقدام في كمان واحد، احنا دفنا قبل 3 ايام هاي هنا حصان.
Health officials warn that the arrival of the summer heat risks the outbreak of deadly diseases.
To maintain full operations, health alone needs 80,000 liters of fuel a day. The water and sanitation sector alone needs another 70,000 liters of fuel a day to operate critical services. From June 15 to 23rd, the water and sanitation cluster received less than 5% of the fuel needed each day to keep these services running. Lack of safe water and sanitation is significantly contributing to the spread of diseases.
Aid groups have accused Israel of deliberately targeting Gaza's water and sanitation services. Israel's military claims the facilities are being used by Hamas militants for terrorist purposes. The UN estimates nearly 70% of Gaza's water and sanitation plants have been destroyed or damaged by Israel's heavy bombardment. That includes all 5 of the territory's wastewater treatment facilities, plus water desalination plants, sewage pumping stations, wells, and reservoirs. Meanwhile, protests against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have been ongoing even before the current war with Hamas, with some demonstrators saying the Israeli Prime Minister's government has to go. Anger across Israel has been growing at the government's handling of the war in Gaza and the hostage crisis. Thousands of anti-war protesters have flooded the streets across the country, participating in a weekly protest organized by the families of hostages. The protesters are calling for the resignation of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his government, as well as for an immediate release of the hostages and a complete ceasefire in Gaza.
The fact that we really need to change our government because they just don't take care of us, in simple words. And the second thing is to bring back our hostages.
The Israeli society need a recovery, need some kind of a healing, and this type of healing will take place only when these people are back home, when the people from the north of Israel will be back home, and the war will be over, and Netanyahu and his government will go home.
We would like this government gone, but most of all, we just want the war to stop, and for all the kidnapped to come home, and for everyone to just be home, and no more killing, no more death, just for this nightmare to end for all of us.
So basically, what we want today is we want all the hostages freed, and we want to end the war, and we want the government to retire, and because we don't trust Netanyahu, we don't trust our government, because all they're causing is pain and war, and people lose their lives.
Prime Minister Netanyahu has claimed his administration is doing all it can to free the hostages and defeat Hamas in Gaza. Last month, he called on his coalition government to get a grip following weeks of infighting, and has also accused the United States of withholding weapons, which Washington has denied. The latest weekend protests happened after at least 47 people were killed by Israeli strikes across northern Gaza, according to Palestinian and hospital officials. The Israel-Hamas war erupted on October the 7th, when Hamas militants who stormed southern Israel killed about 1,200 people and took some 250 others hostage. Israel has responded by bombarding and invading the enclave, killing more than 37,000 Palestinians there, according to Gaza's health ministry. And back in Gaza, amid the conflict that has displaced tens of thousands of people, a group of girls have taken up boxing. This newfound passion serves as a way to pass the time and offers a distraction from the harsh realities of war. Take a look.
Up, 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 uppercut, up, 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 ايوه يلا بعد يلا يلا بعد يلا up ايوه ايوه واحد اثنين go واحد go.
Despite facing limited resources and lacking proper equipment, these displaced Palestinian girls are learning boxing. Far from home and living in a refugee camp, they are eager to channel their negative energy into something positive.
هاي الملاكمة بتخلي الواحد يفرغ طاقته السلبية بما إنه إحنا ب9 شهور حرب خلتنا نفرغ إحنا وكنا مكبوتين.
After 9 months of war, we felt suffocated and trapped, facing psychological crisis. Practicing this sport helps us release negative energy and makes us stronger, more determined and focused. My goal is to participate in international championships and fulfill my dream of raising the Palestinian flag when the war ends.
Since the war erupted on October the 7th, all of Gaza's schools have closed, leaving hundreds of thousands of young people in the Gaza Strip without formal schooling or a safe place to spend their days. NGOs are scrambling to keep children off the streets and their minds focused on something other than the war as heavy fighting continues. Also displaced by the war, boxing coach Osama decided to start training young girls in the camp to help with their mental health.
I spoke with the camp director about my desire to train the girls to help them overcome this difficult psychological condition. Despite limited resources, I received a great response from the entire camp.
About 80% of Gaza's population has been driven from their homes. Much of Gaza is damaged or destroyed, including 90% of school buildings, according to aid group estimates. Children are among the most severely affected, with the UN estimating some 19,000 children have been orphaned, and nearly a third of those under the age of 2 face acute malnutrition. Protesters have continued to clash with police in Kenya over a finance bill that would raise the cost of living, even after President William Ruto said he would not sign it in the wake of the storming of Parliament. The demonstrations have now morphed into calls for the president to resign and anger over police brutality in the country. Paresh Barod is struggling to come to terms with the damage inflicted on his business in Nairobi. Days of anti-government protest in Kenya have been accompanied by some vandalism and looting. Paresh says he's in shock after his shop was set ablaze, destroying everything.
I'm the owner of this very prestigious establishment which has been surviving, for the last 90 years. And very sad day for us today. It's looking inside, it's completely destroyed. The fire gutted everything, absolutely everything. All merchandise. I don't know what to say. I'm I'm blank, completely blank. I'm in a shock of state. And we just refurbished this entire building, and it looked like Kenya's pride. Uganda House looked like Kenya's pride. I just don't have words. I just don't know what to say here. Everything in In a flick of a few hours, everything gone, everything destroyed.
The protests turned violent when police opened fire on demonstrators at the Kenyan parliament, resulting in at least 39 deaths.
But this is terrible. I think the fire which took place was the final nail in the coffin, you see. If that tear gas or something, whatever that, I don't know, whatever it had not gone, I don't think this fire would have happened.
President William Ruto has since dropped the proposed tax increases that sparked the unrest, but the demonstrations have morphed into calls for him to resign and anger over police brutality in the most serious crisis of his presidency.
This is very unfortunate and very sad that because that man has just tried to say his right, he has been hit with a cancer. Yes. And that is not very good. And Ruto, we are watching you. We are watching you. We are watching you.
The unpopular finance bill would have aimed to raise $2.7 billion through taxes on items including bread, cooking oil, and diapers. But now Kenya is shifting from raising revenues to cutting spending.
I am directing for immediate further austerity measures to reduce expenditure, starting with the Office of the President, the entire presidency, and extending to the entire executive arm of government. Operational expenditure in the presidency be reduced to remove allocations for the confidential fort, reduce travel, hospitality, purchase of motor vehicles, renovations, and other expenditures. This will cover the entire presidency and also the executive arm of government. I also propose that equally, Parliament, the judiciary, and county governments, working with the National Treasury, also undertake budget cuts and austerity to ensure that we do live within our means, respecting the very loud message that is coming from the people of Kenya.
President Ruto's withdrawal of support for the bill has complicated efforts to tackle Kenya's heavy debt burden. Public borrowing is 68% of GDP, higher than the 55% recommended by the World Bank and the IMF. The IMF has urged Kenya to meet revenue targets to access more funding, but protesters say they don't trust the government won't still try to implement tax rises, and many have vowed to keep calling for President Ruto to step down. And finally on the program, Rwanda is preparing for future food challenges. The country's agricultural challenges are real, with only 51.41% of the country being arable land. As a result, the Rwanda Institute for Conservation and Agriculture was opened in July of 2019 to educate Rwandan students with the knowledge and skills to create cutting-edge solutions to food problems in the country. Our Foreign Affairs correspondent Amarachi Ubani reports.
The Rwanda Institute for Conservation Agriculture, RICA for short, sits on 1,300 hectares of land in Buskira in the country's eastern province, developed by the Howard Buffett Foundation into its present structure. Here, students are taught to contribute to food security and food safety by working through various agricultural processes, from poultry to pigs to cows.
This is our milking parlor, so this is where we milk the cows.
A natural lake nearby is the Institute's major water supply, and even animal waste is ploughed back as manure on the fields. The rudimentary processes of smallholder operations are a must in the students' first year. They're given small pieces of land to cultivate, and chickens to rear the local way, because in the end, they will be working with rural Rwandan farmers.
We don't expect them to be smallholder farmers when they graduate, but they will be providing services to smallholder farmers, and we expect them to be buying produce from those smallholder farmers. So we want them to understand the experiences of those smallholder farmers, because we're very interested in increasing the quality of life for those smallholder farmers also.
250 students are currently studying at the institute, and the scholarship provided by the Howard Buffett Foundation is highly competitive, with just 2.8% of those who apply gaining admission. Learning takes place in aerated classrooms, and the only rooms with air conditioners are where meat from animals on the institute are processed and stored. The initiative in Rwanda is one that was once discussed by other African countries as well.
This initiative was floated for Africa, but Rwanda moved quickly. And so when they evaluated, which other place to be other than Rwanda, given, governance, etc., issues. So I think sometimes it's just that other African countries, we delay in our consideration. Maybe the decision processes are much longer. And sometimes when you have a person of action like Howard Buffett, he moves quickly. So sometimes we need to just, grab the bull by the horn, quickly sometimes.
Some alumni of the institute have been employed there and are given different responsibilities.
The change to the job market is that when you are a student here, you are allowed to make mistakes because you're a student, you're learning. But when you get into job market, then it is very serious. So whatever I have to do it perfectly and in a very good condition.
The goal of the institute is for graduates to impact lives and preserve the country's critical resources. From Buskira, Rwanda, Amarachi Ubani, Channel Television News.
And that's the program today, but remember, our top stories are never far away. You can catch them on channelstv.com. Thank you for watching. I'm Tenyola Oyetayo. Bye for now.